Coming soon to own on
YouTube and Twitch. How an Olympic snowboarder became FBI's most wanted. Now for this talking, let's get straight into it, man. Oops, my bad. Didn't have it loaded. Look kinda dumb.
Ryan
Let's get straight
Wedding,
into it now.
Olympic snowboarder and currently on the FBI's 10 most wanted for being a murderous drug lord? But how?
What? Nigga, you were an Olympian. What went wrong?
How does someone go from carving up on the Olympic slopes to being the most dangerous kingpin of an international empire?
He turned into a kingpin?
Snow. The FBI first became aware of Ryan Wedding's activities
Cocaine, a
on
crazy
June 10th,
drug, man.
2008, when 3 men landed at LAX San Diego. One Russian, the other Persian, and the third Canadian. They weren't there for business meetings or sightseeing. They were there to buy 24 kilos of cocaine from a former KGB agent. When they landed, the former KGB agent asked to see the money. However, the Canadian refused, saying, "Obviously, I didn't put it in my fucking suitcase." This angered the ex-agent, but they found middle ground. They'd first buy 1 kilo, inspect it, then return for the rest. The next day, the Persian and Canadian visited a Persian rug store to pick up $120,000 in cash, wrapped in newspaper, and hid it in their hotel
Holy
room.
shit.
On June 13th, the Russian left the hotel with $17,000 to buy the sample, while the other 2 waited in the room. After an hour and a half, they
Wait. $17,000 per kilo? Hold on. So 17 is 1, so 17 times 24. Hold on. I don't know if I'm doing that math. So if 1 kilo out of the 24 kilos they're buying, that's $400,000 worth of cocaine. So either they don't have enough or I got my numbers mixed up.
grew restless, hungry. They stepped out to get food and walked straight into an FBI trap. The deal had been a setup from the start. Trofimov, the ex-KGB
I think he's saying KBG agent in like in a hind sense sort of a way, like as in these guys buying the drugs didn't know he was an ex-agent, because why would you buy drugs from an ex-agent in the first place? So I guess they didn't know, or even they did. They just dumb as hell.
agent was an FBI informant wearing a wire, and the cocaine was supplied by the Bureau. The Russian and the Persian pled guilty, but the Canadian did not. At his 2010 sentencing, he pleaded with the judge, "What I did was completely out of character for me, and it's a personal mission of mine to rebuild my reputation. As an athlete, I was always taught that there are no second chances, and, well, I'm here asking for exactly that." The man asking for forgiveness was none other than the Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding. The judge showed
Holy
leniency,
shit.
handing down a sentence that seemed merciful at the time, a decision that would lead to a catastrophic series of events. 15 years later, Ryan would be on the FBI's 10 most wanted for murders all across North America and for being the kingpin of $1 billion international drug empire. This is
$1 billion?
the hunt for Snow King. Ryan Wedding was born in 1981 in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and by the time Ryan could walk, his grandfather already had him on skis. As a child, Ryan was described as bold and reckless, but also having a strong focus. At the age of 12, shortly after his family moved to Coquitlam, British Columbia, near Vancouver, he started snowboarding. Soon, he entered his first race and won. That's when he got noticed by Bob Allison, a former professional skier who was putting together an elite Canadian snowboarding team. In a 2009 interview with the Rolling Stone, Bob Allison described Ryan as a child with no fear. A lot of kids, they say they want to go fast, but they don't really want to go fast. They hold something back because there's a little bit of fear there of falling. Ryan had none of that. By 15, he had made the Canadian national.
I know he feels terrible because it's like, in a sense, like that's your mentor, and like the person you mentored grows up to becoming a serial killer, drug dealer. It's like, damn.
team. He competed across the Alps and Andes, winning bronze at the Junior World Championships in 1999 and silver 2 years later. Commentators began comparing him to Ross Rebliati, Canadian's Olympic gold medalist. And in 2002, at just 20 years old, Ryan Wedding was chosen to represent Canada at the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah. It seemed like the start of a serious career. However, the day of the race, the weather had changed and the snow had softened, turning watery. When the race began, Ryan launched himself out of the chute. By the third gate, his line was off, but it was too late to fix. He finished 24th, just 1 second short of qualifying for the next round. Years of training had all led to that one moment, and in an instant, it was gone. Ross Rebliati acknowledged Ryan's potential, but said he had everything in place to make it happen, but you've got to want it, and Ryan wanted something else. After Salt Lake City, that
snowboarding was the hobby. Drugs took over and became his passion. It's unfortunate, man.
something else started to take shape. Not long after the Olympics, he enrolled at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, but instead of channeling his drive into academics, he focused on building his body. The slim Olympian became stockier, stronger. He began working nights as a bouncer. A friend from the time remembered his first shift. A fight broke out in the parking lot and spiraled into chaos. Cars screeched across the pavement, trying to run people over. One of the bouncers grabbed a hatchet from another person in the fight and smashed it into the hood of a car that came at them. It was around that time that Vancouver was starting to change. Random violence became common. What police didn't realize at the time was that the city was on the brink of a gang war, a fight for control over its marijuana trade. In the early 2000s, Vancouver sat just 25 miles from the longest unprotected border in North America. A pound of marijuana sold for about $2,000 on the streets. Across the border, it went for double. Between 2001 and 2004, shootings erupted in the city's clubs. Police began sweeping through bars, throwing out anyone who looked like a dealer. The old criminal groups stayed quiet, but the new ones didn't. Peter Edwards, a Toronto Star reporter, explained, "Many of these were upper-middle-class kids. They went to good schools. What drew them to it was the image, the glamour. Flashy, reckless, eager to prove themselves. Their crimes became a kind of performance. The violence was public. Bodies left in cars, along the waterfront, and in the street. Among the clubs caught in this storm was the one where Ryan worked. As other bouncers began wearing bulletproof vests, he told his mother he didn't need one. He wasn't scared. He was intrigued. Soon, Ryan found himself making
I wouldn't say he crazy for not getting a bulletproof vest, because at the end of the day, or at least in today's standards, these YNs, man, they got some shit that'll tear through that bulletproof vest. That shit don't. It might slow it down, but they got some shit that will tear through it. Like they spray and pray. You gonna need a full body juggernaut suit if you want to stay protected.
friends with the same people he had been hired to keep out. Friends with connections. Connections with opportunity. His girlfriend at the time noticed the shift from the quiet family type who didn't care about status or appearance to the man wearing Prada shoes and Breitling watches.
Hold on, he having it, bro. Big bro having it though. My boy went from bouncer to Prada and Rolex. He had big bro
After 2
having
years
it.
of college, Ryan dropped out. With a $250,000 loan from his father, he bought and resold a house in Maple Ridge, a high-end suburb just outside of Vancouver. The profit funded a luxurious new apartment in Westwood Plateau in Coquitlam, BC, with high ceilings, a pinball machine, and a racing seat gaming setup. In the garage, he had snowmobiles, a Ducati, and a BMW M5. But even with the profit from the resold house on Maple Ridge, this lifestyle was too expensive for a bouncer.
I'm trying to think, what? I'm not the best with financials, but I'm trying to put together. So the nigga took out a loan, 250,000, bought a house, resold the house, and made profit on it. Then the nigga went and bought an apartment. And then he bought a BMW. That shit kind of backwards. Why not buy a normal house? Like you paying rent when you could have just bought another house.
So, wedding turned to something else. A business, quiet, profitable, and illegal. The setup seemed perfect. His friend owned a property in Maple Ridge called the 18 Carat Farms, but instead of carrots, they planted cannabis. A confidential informant said Ryan and a partner were cultivating 8,000 marijuana plants. Twice a month, Ryan drove out, tended to the plants, and delivered product to a supplier. The operation was pulling in hundreds of thousands a year.
I don't smoke, but I would say as long as the buds are clean, you're not mixing it in with fentanyl. It's nothing wrong with selling weed, bro. Just keeping the buck.
Maybe more. However, it was also pulling a lot of electricity. 2,000 kilowatt hours a month, far more than any typical warehouse. There were a few things that could explain that kind of energy use, and one of them was marijuana grow lights. By the summer of 2006, the authorities had taken notice. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP for short, raided the property, finding loaded guns. Canadian Mounted.
I hope this is like a celebratory thing, and these niggas dead ass don't be walking around like this. Because if a nigga pulled up on me, like in this fit, and not even on horse, if the nigga pulled up on me in this type of fit trying to arrest me, I'm whooping his ass.
Police, or RCMP for short, raided the property, finding loaded guns in a locked safe, 6,800 cannabis plants, and 86 pounds of dried marijuana, an estimated $10 million in value and the largest grow farm uncovered in Maple Ridge. But with only a confidential informant linking Ryan to the site, the police never pressed charges. It wasn't surprising. Between 1997 and 2003, BC law enforcement investigated roughly 25,000 grow ops, buildings reworked to produce large amounts of marijuana. However, the police couldn't keep up, so the priority shifted from prosecution to just shutting places down. In fall 2007, Ryan befriended Hassan Shirini, a Persian Canadian known to police since 1997. Shirini opened a new door for Ryan, the Hawala Network, a trust-based money transferring system dating back to the 8th century and still operating around the world today. Hawala, also called Hundi, operates on trust and brokers, the Hawaladars. A client hands a Hawaladar cash and a fee. They agree on a code. The broker relays that code and the details to a broker located where the recipient of the transfer lives. Payment is made locally. The actual funds are settled later between brokers, sometimes via the internet or courier. It is efficient, discreet, and global, and because it moves outside banks and other traditional channels, the network can be exploited for criminal purposes. By 2007, Wedding was telling friends he was broke. He'd lost roughly $500,000 on a shady real estate deal and, per Shirini's later testimony, another $300,000 on a cocaine deal gone bad. According to Shirini, Wedding then approached him about buying cocaine in California and said he could front about $340,000. After a series of meetings, including one with two men tied to Russian organized crime, they agreed to try for 24 kilos from a contact in LA. If it worked, they'd keep going. From the moment they arrived in LA, the FBI was watching. Wedding had never handled a deal this big, and, to agents, it showed. He never asked where the cocaine was coming from, and he appeared in person rather than using a middleman. The exchange ran through two Russians.
Oh my God, my boy was just out there lost and confused.
Krapchen feared Trofimov, an ex-KGB agent from a now-defunct secret police system whose reputation alone scared most people. On June 10, 2008, Trofimov met them at the airport and demanded to see the cash. He was told they needed a few days to access it. Angry, he still agreed to the plan. Sell them a single kilo, then the rest later. The FBI had agents posted throughout the airport, ready to make an arrest. But when the plan shifted, they stood down. Wedding didn't look nervous. Agents said he acted like a tourist. He and Shirini visited malls, restaurants, hookah bars, and a Persian rug store that doubled as a Hawala broker. They picked up $120,000 there, and the deal was on. On June 13, 2008, as soon as Krapchen handed Trofimov $17,000 for 1 kilo, agents moved in, and he was arrested on the spot. Wedding.
Oh, so I did have the numbers right. It was 17 per kilo, 24 kilos. So technically, they would have had to pay 408,000. Yeah, so they would have had they had enough money. They only took out 121,000 at first. I thought they was like severely under the budget.
And Shirini were arrested next, as they were leaving the hotel room in San Diego. With hours of recorded calls and meetings against them, Shirini and Krapchen agreed to plea deals. Hassan Shirini was sentenced to 18 months, and Michael Krapchen 30 months. But Ryan Wedding declined to cooperate. Brett Kalina, a former FBI agent who arrested him, told the Rolling Stone, "He was very controlled. Once we read him his rights, he didn't say anything. And in few instances that we did have the chance to interact with him, when we were either picking him up from jail or dropping him off to make a proffer, he was kind of like, you know you're not getting anything from me." Ryan remained quiet, but his demeanor showed disrespect for authority. During a jail transfer search, he used a homophobic slur against Agent Kalina. The outburst.
Oh my God. How dare he? How dare a drug dealer / murderer say something that offensive? Oh my God, man. Lock this monster up.
Was striking because it was unusual. Typically, when people are arrested, they try to make nice. They're vulnerable. They know who has.
Nice for what? As long as you don't make a threat to anybody as long as you don't spit on nobody, or as long as you keep your cursing down to a minimum, you can act however the fuck you want. If you being nice or mean don't change the outcome if I'm guilty or not. No, what I tell you, what I tell you, what evidence you have against me, that changes the outcome.
The power at the moment and who doesn't, Kalina explained. His trial was scheduled in San Diego for November 2009. His mother and sister attended in support. In court, Ryan Wedding's lawyer argued that Shirini had brought Wedding along as the fall guy. To create the impression that Wedding financed the operation, the lawyer said Shirini claimed his credit card was maxed out, pushing Wedding to cover daily expenses. And when the conspirators discussed business, by phone or in person, they often spoke Farsi or Russian, languages Ryan did not understand. And when speaking English, they used code, referring to the drugs as cars. Perhaps, the lawyers argued, Wedding really believed he was in Los Angeles to buy automobiles. When Hassan Shirini testified,
it's a good cover-up. I'll give him that. It's a good cover-up.
He offered a different account. He failed to disclose that he had managed the Hawala transfer to the Los Angeles drug store and that he had arranged for the drugs to be smuggled into Canada, but he insisted he handled only logistics. Wedding, he said, devised the scheme and put up most of the money. Ryan Wedding was convicted of conspiring to traffic cocaine. The mandatory minimum was 10 years. But Agent Brett Kalina believed Wedding understood that there was a strong chance he would be transferred to a Canadian facility where the term would be substantially reduced. During the 2 years between arrest and conviction, Wedding was held in San Diego at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a place that, for him, seemed to have done more training than correcting. Agent Kalina admitted this was only the beginning for Ryan. You've got people that are in that facility that have amazing drug world connections. We really did just turn him into a much better drug dealer than he was when he started with us.
Oh yeah, it gave him experience.
The Metropolitan Correctional Center holds inmates awaiting trial or sentencing for a range of federal offenses, including lower-level members of Mexican drug trafficking organizations, particularly mules, who specialize in moving drugs across the border.
You done gave this nigga cartel ties? It's over.
While there, Wedding organized up to 5 girlfriends back home to wash his car, clean his apartment, and collect money from associates to pay creditors. He also phoned male associates, boasting about the good connections he was making in custody. Meanwhile, in court, he sang a completely different tune. What I did was completely out of character for me, and it is a personal mission of mine to rebuild my reputation, he told the judge. And they bought it. The court imposed a lower term than initially intended, 48 months minus time served. Ryan Wedding hadn't lied to the court, at least not entirely. He did plan to rebuild, but it wouldn't be the kind of rehabilitation the judge had in mind. What he took with him back to Canada wasn't a desire to live a life of a law-abiding citizen, but experience that acted as the foundation to his future criminal empire. With the new year, it's time to get to rebuilding yourself. A good workout routine is a sneak out weight.
Good ad placement. I got it.
Now
You got
open
me.
territory. Brian Fitzpatrick, a senior investigative reporter with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, explained, "In Canada, it's not as regimented as Mexico, where certain cartels control key corridors or plazas. It's much more entrepreneurial. You might work with the Sinaloa cartel, and there's someone else a couple towns over who does as well, and you don't even know each other exist." By the early 2010s, one drug kingpin was already making inroads into Canada, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who had risen to become the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. Under his command, the Sinaloa cartel expanded into one of the largest drug smuggling networks in history. At the time, the cartel was operating in more than 50 countries and responsible for the bulk of narcotics crossing the US-Mexico border. In the 2010s, its attention turned north. Canada, with its high street prices and relatively light federal drug enforcement compared to the US, was seen as a strategic safe zone, a place where cartel operatives could meet international partners and arrange shipments of drug precursors. The cartel's expansion into Canada caught American authorities off guard. According to U.S. investigators, cocaine shipments were smuggled across the border into Arizona, stored in a warehouse in Tucson or Phoenix, then transported by vehicle to the Washington-British Columbia border. From there, the drugs were loaded onto helicopters and dropped into forested areas on the Canadian side. But law enforcement had plans of their own. An officer identified in court records only as Joe infiltrated Canada's underground drug market as a part of a sting operation known as Operation Harrington, designed specifically to disrupt the cocaine pipeline between Mexico and Canada. Meanwhile, by February 2014, Ryan Wedding had filed for bankruptcy. In a sworn statement, he claimed to be unemployed. British Columbia bankruptcy records showed
Oh
he was
yeah, of
leasing
course he was unemployed, nigga. He put down his Olympic dreams and became a dope dealer.
a new Ford F-350 pickup and living in a gated condo complex in Coquitlam with his wife. Despite this, Wedding declared that neither of them had any income. On paper, he was relying solely on financial support from family members. I, due to being in prison for several years, unable to work and contribute to the household, was unable to fulfill my financial obligations as they became due, Wedding wrote. That was the public version. Privately, something else was underway. In January 2015, the undercover officer Joe traveled to Montreal to meet with a man named Filipos Kalaros, identified in court documents as having direct ties to El Chapo. According to the records,
Direct
at their
ties?
meeting,
Oh,
Kalaros told
shit.
Joe that he had brought the man in charge. Moments later, Ryan Wedding walked in and introduced himself as a cocaine importer. From the moment Joe met Wedding, he realized immediately that he was dealing with a seasoned operator. Wedding asked detailed questions about boat capacity, mapped out transfer routes, and together they came up with a plan. A large research vessel would collect the shipment from St. Kitts, then transfer it mid-sea to a fleet of smaller fishing trawlers, which would deliver the load discreetly to shore in Newfoundland. They agreed on a test run, between 500 and 1,000 kilograms of cocaine, with Joe taking
That's a test run. 500 to 1,000 kilos being transported over the ocean waters is a test run. And my
a
God.
25% cut of the shipment's value as his fee. But before anything could move forward, the plan was shut down. On April 20th, 2015, the RCMP launched coordinated raids across Canada and issued 15 arrest warrants. Among those named were Ryan Wedding and Filipos Kalaros. It remains unclear whether Kalaros cooperated with the Crown, but in the end, he served just 1 day in prison, as the rest was covered by
1 day? Oh my God, my nigga sung like a bird. 1 day? My nigga was squealing in that fucking in that interrogation room for 1 day. He did more than cooperate, nigga. He was in that bitch eating straight lavish food. He was in there cracking jokes and shit with the police officers. He did more than work with them. He snitched on everybody he knew.
time already spent in custody. Then, on the evening of November 7th, 2018, Kalaros was sitting in a coffee shop in Montreal's Little Italy when a man entered the cafe and shot him. He died that night in the hospital. The murder was never solved, but there was one clear person of interest, someone with motive and reason to fear what Kalaros might say to authorities. That man was Ryan Wedding. Kalaros had knowledge of the St. Kitts plot. If brought to trial, he could have testified. But by then, Wedding was no longer in Canada. When the RCMP arrived at his Montreal condo in 2015 to make the arrest, he was already gone. Authorities believe he fled the country and went straight into the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. But while in hiding, Ryan Wedding would become more dangerous than ever. Little is known about his exact movements in the years that followed, but the consequences of his decisions were felt, often far from view, and sometimes by those with no part in his world. On the morning of November 20th, 2023, 28-year-old Jasprit Kaur Sidhu was woken by her father, Jagtar Singh Sidhu, 57. They had argued days earlier, but that morning there was an urgency in his voice. He told her, "If we don't talk today, it will be never." Before leaving, he said, "Remember one thing. The day I die, I will tell myself that I love my daughter more than anyone else in this world." Jagtar and his wife, Harbhajan Kaur Sidhu, 55, had been visiting from India for 4 months. They were staying with Jasprit and her brother Gurdit at their rental home on Mayfield Road near the Caledon-Brampton border. The couple planned to return to India in January. Until then, their visit had been peaceful. But late that night on November 20th, around 11:30 p.m., everything changed. Jasprit was getting ready for bed when she saw a man standing in the hallway. She saw her father collapse from gunfire, heard her mother scream, and then there was complete silence except for the noises of gunshots. Downstairs, her close friend Sukhwinder, Sunny Singh, had heard the gunfire. He rushed outside and saw the shooter flee in the back of a pickup truck with at least one other person inside. When they were gone, he returned to the house to find Jagtar motionless outside the bathroom. There was no pulse. His wife, Harbhajan, shot multiple times, was still breathing, but barely. According to the family, police arrived nearly 20 minutes after the first 911 call. The ambulance took another 10 minutes. Harbhajan,
30 minutes?
who had been shot a total of 22 times, died in the hospital nearly 2 weeks later.
22 times? Yo, hold on. Oh, what's the beef behind that, though? To shoot someone 22 times, you gotta, like, hate them.
Her daughter, Jasprit, shot 13 times, survived.
13?
Most of the bullets were removed, but one remains lodged in her spine. Doctors determined that removing it would carry a high risk of paralysis or coma. At first, investigators were at a loss. Why would someone target a quiet, ordinary family and with such brutality? The answer came later when the investigation was handed over to the FBI, who alleged that the Sidus were targeted by mistake. According to agents, the shooter, still unidentified, was working for Ryan Wedding. He had been sent in response to a stolen drug shipment. The Sidus, they believe, had nothing to do with it. For federal investigators, the killing of Jagtar and Harbhajan Sidhu became yet another tragic example of the damage caused by the global drug trade. But for their children, Jasprit and Gurdit, the impact was direct. Jasprit spent 7 months in the hospital. When she finally stood again, she needed assistance with even routine tasks. Trauma lingers. She says she still hears her mother's screams every day. I can never forget that, she said. Speaking about Wedding, her words were clear. He will have to face his karma. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Ryan Wedding expanded his drug smuggling operation into a billion-dollar enterprise, moving an estimated 60 tons of cocaine each year, valued at nearly $500 million, primarily through the United States and into Canada. Over time, he accumulated a series of aliases: R.W., James Conrad King, Buddy, Giant, Public Enemy, El Toro, and El Jefe. Behind the scenes,
Oh yeah, now my nigga was doing some runs. He's definitely was hiding in the cartel.
Giant, Public Enemy, El Toro,
El Toro,
and El Jefe.
And El Jefe. To get called El Jefe, he was definitely running with the cartel.
Behind the scenes, Wedding constructed a network, people he could trust to carry out orders and keep the supply chain moving. One of them was Jonathan Acevedo Garcia, a Colombian-Canadian from Montreal who worked in his family's cleaning business. In 2009, U.S. agents stopped Acevedo Garcia at the New York-Ontario border and found 23,000 ecstasy pills laced with methamphetamine in his car. He pleaded guilty to drug trafficking.
23,000 ecstasy pills laced with methanol or methamphetamines?
Conspiracy and received a 4-year sentence, part of which he served at Reeves County in Texas, where he likely met Wedding. By 2024, police say Acevedo Garcia was working directly with Wedding's second-in-command, Andrew Clark, a Toronto-based elevator mechanic in his 30s who had relocated to Mexico in 2022. Acevedo Garcia helped coordinate Wedding's drug logistics from a distance. While he organized shipments, Wedding and Clark were focused on eliminating any threats to their organization. Clark had taken interest in a young man named Malik Cunningham, who had just been released from the Toronto South Detention Center. Then, Clark arranged for Cunningham to travel to Mexico, where he underwent weapons training, ranging from small arms to long-range rifles, under a program modeled on military instruction. Once trained, he was sent back to Canada with names. His first assignment came with a payment of $100,000. The target, Randy Fader, a 29-year-old American-Canadian citizen. On April 1st, 2024, Cunningham traveled to Fader's home in Nigeria and shot him at close range in his driveway before fleeing. The motive remains unclear.
American-Canadian, but he lives in Nigeria. That is a sentence. I'm not gonna lie.
But police believe Fader had drawn the negative attention of the Wedding network. With that killing carried out, Clark began preparing Cunningham for additional jobs. One contact offered $200,000 to kill a real estate agent in Vancouver. Another promised more than twice the amount for a group in Toronto. A third listed a target in Dubai for $1 million. All were described as enemies of El Jefe. Then, on April...
Yeah, he definitely went to the cartel and he learned a lot of techniques.
April 14th, 2024, Cunningham made a critical mistake. He was spotted driving the same vehicle he had used in the Fader shooting. The car, fitted with fraudulent license plates, was parked outside a funeral home in the Greater Toronto area, where mourners had gathered following another homicide. Officers from York Regional Police approached, suspecting the vehicle was stolen, and took Cunningham into custody. Inside the car, they found 4 mobile phones, multiple rounds of ammunition, and $100,000 in cash. When investigators searched the devices, they uncovered encrypted messages exchanged between Cunningham and Clark, messages that prosecutors say laid out the structure and scope of the murder-for-hire plot. This was the beginning of the FBI's Operation Giant Slalom, and more...
I mean, they only got 3 more people left.
More arrests followed soon after. Authorities arrested Rate and Singh at their home in Ontario on charges of conspiracy to...
Hold on.
Soon after. Authorities...
No weird shit. I don't know his ethnicity, so I'm not trying to be weird. But This nigga low key looks like a Middle Eastern version of Diddy. Like low key looks like the Middle Eastern version of Diddy.
Arrested Rate and Singh at their home in Ontario on charges of conspiracy to export, possess, and distribute controlled substances, while Andrew Clark was arrested on October 8th in a restaurant in Guadalajara on 11 charges including conspiracy to possess, export, and distribute cocaine, 4 counts of murder, and 1 count of attempted murder. He was later extradited to the United States. In total, 14 men were arrested, 8 of them Canadian. Malik Cunningham, charged alongside Clark in the killing of Ryan Fader, is scheduled to appear before a Toronto court in January 2026. At a press conference held days after Clark's arrest in October, the FBI announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and extradition of Ryan Wedding.
50,000? Come on, FBI. This nigga is worth $500 million. This nigga's a $1 billion cocaine dealer. 50,000? Nobody's like, he can pay people to not snitch on him for 50,000.
Speaking to reporters, U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada stated, "He chose to become a major drug trafficker, and he chose to become a killer." By early 2025, authorities were preparing for trial, and Jonathan Acevedo Garcia was expected to be a central witness. But on January 31st, while eating lunch at a shopping mall in Medellin, Colombia, Acevedo Garcia was allegedly shot and killed. The attack was carried out in public in broad daylight, and it threw the prosecution's case into disarray. Without him, the government lost a key piece of direct testimony, one that had been intended to tie several of Wedding's associates directly to the operation. Although at the time, there was no direct confirmation from law enforcement that he was killed. During a virtual court appearance, Gurpreet Singh's lawyer, Brian Greenspan, noted, "There has never been an admission that he is dead, although we all know he's dead." As a result, the trial was postponed to 2026. In March of 2025, Clark pleaded not guilty to all charges in a California federal courtroom, though the killings took.
Not guilty? You gonna try to beat 5? You gonna try to beat 5? Well, 4 murder cases and 1 attempted murder case, and you gonna try to beat all of them off of not guilty? Boy, you should have took a plea deal.
Place in Canada, prosecutors allege that they were ordered as part of a broader U.S. criminal conspiracy. His trial, too, has been delayed, now rescheduled for February 2026. On March 6, 2025, Ryan Wedding was officially added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list.
Hold on, what'd she do? Kind of bad, though. I mean, they only got 1 out of 10, but, you know?
That same day, the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs announced a reward of up to $10 million for information.
Now we're talking. 50,000, nobody gonna 10 mil. That's a whole new ball game.
Leading to his arrest or conviction, building on the FBI's existing $50,000 reward. At a press conference, senior bureau official F. Courtright Whelan stated, "We are committed to protecting American communities from thugs who, with clear consciences, deliberately peddle illicit narcotics and prey on our youth." On November 19, 2025, the U.S. Justice Department, the FBI, and the RCMP held a joint press conference. During the announcement, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed that a newly unsealed indictment accuses Ryan Wedding of coordinating the murder of a key witness ahead of his scheduled testimony. According to prosecutors, Wedding had photographs of the witness and his wife posted to a website called Dirty News in an effort to assist co-conspirators in locating the pair. The murder took place in Medellin, Colombia on January 31, 2025. The site had since been seized and taken offline as part of the Operation Giant Slalom. Although authorities did not release the witness's name, the timing of the killing aligns with the alleged murder of Acevedo Garcia. During the press conference, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi stated,
"Today we're unsealing a new indictment charging Wedding."
Bro, why does this nigga always look lost and confused? This nigga's supposed to be the head of the FBI.
With 2 additional counts of witness tampering and intimidation, murder, money laundering, and drug trafficking.
On November 18, 2025, 10 alleged associates of Wedding, including 7 Canadians, were arrested and charged under the expanded indictment. Among those arrested were Gursawak Singh Bal of Mississauga, identified by authorities as a co-owner of the Dirty News website. Another defendant, Canadian-Dominican reggaeton artist Edwin Basora Hernandez, is accused of providing the victim's contact details to help Wedding's group locate him. Also taken into custody was Deepak Paradkar, a lawyer for Ryan Wedding. According to Bill Asaley, first assistant U.S. attorney to the Central District of California, Paradkar put up a little bit of resistance during the arrest. His lawyer advised him to kill the witness. When you have lawyers who are assisting international drug trafficking players on how to evade law enforcement and to murder witnesses, we can't have that stand. RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhem also addressed the public during the press conference.
I want to emphasize that our work is not done. Fugitive Ryan Wedding remains one of the top threats to Canadian public safety, and as per the previous indictment, continues to run an over $1 billion a year criminal enterprise.
Authorities believe Wedding is currently in Mexico, but his presence in the United States, Canada, Colombia, Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and other locations has not been ruled out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, he hiding in Mexico.
He is described as 6 foot 3 inches or 190 centimeters, approximately 240 pounds or 108 kilograms. His eyes are blue, his hair brown, and he may be wearing a beard or mustache. The FBI has urged anyone with information on Wedding's whereabouts to reach out via WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram using the number on your screen. Tipsters may also contact the nearest FBI office, U.S. Embassy or consulate, and submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. All submissions will be treated confidentially. Thank you to all of you fine folks who stayed until the end of the video.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If he has a nickname of El Toro and El Jefe, he definitely learned some techniques in Mexico from the cartels. He probably got a safe house down there. I'll probably say he does. Let me know what y'all think about it. That was how an Olympic snowboarder became an FBI most wanted. He had a passion for snowboarding, but I say like early on, his passion became drugs. Snowboarding was just something he did in his hobby, not hobby, but he did in his free time. With that being said, I'm gonna see y'all boys later, dude.
I'm not trying to score. Your heart's an open door. I got the key. I'm trying to keep composure and some more. I know you want some more. Oh, oh. Can your body hear me? Want you to feel me?